Hey fellas, how's the chow? Pretty good? Yeah, you got it all over your mouth. It's gotta be good chow. God. That's right, I forget. This is Morrison Bridge, and it splits. So Washington Street's like right over here. I'm trying to get to Washington Street. This is gonna be a pain in the ass. I gotta somehow get over there. Welcome to a fresh episode of Historic Murders of Portland, if I can make this happen. Dodging traffic. NATO Parkway can suck it. Alright, except this next come okay. Alright, so I ain't getting through there that way, I'll tell you that much. Okay, I got a fresh case for y'all. An old one, and a really tragic one. From 1878. We're going back to old school Portland. This was all buildings through here. And a couple city blocks here were completely demolished specifically so that the Morrison Bridge off-ramp here could be built and kind of descend into the city. So this used to be just all businesses here. Washington Street and whatnot used to just kind of go through here. This is proven to be a proverbial pain in the butt. I need to get over here. Alright, now we're making some progress. So this is mostly just parking for the most part. But this off-ramp right in front of me, this kind of gums down and becomes Washington Street through here. And squeeze through some cars because there's some suspicious characters over there. But right behind me, kind of over this railing over here, it's only Max. The train goes through there now, but that's where First Avenue would be and was. And then, of course, the next street right up here is Crossing Street, is 2nd Avenue, and this is Washington Street coming down. Now, for my case, it's August 20th, 1878, and the first couple of blocks kind of through here, 1st, 2nd Street, 2nd Avenue, Front Avenue, first couple blocks back from the Willamette River, there's a lot of pawn shops, and one in particular was located just on the other side of Washington here, on the south side of Washington, between 1st and 2nd Avenue. So it would have been literally right across this off-ramp here. That would have been the site of a pawn shop owned by a man named Walter O'Shea. And Walter O'Shea was as far as pawnbrokers go, he was a pretty successful one. He made pretty good money. It seems like he didn't really hide that he made pretty good money. He would it seemed like he sometimes left a little cash behind, at his place of business. I don't know, with how rampant theft was, with how many robbers were in the area, it was maybe safer keeping stuff at your place of business than trying to walk home with any of it or walk into the bank with any of it. And to get to the site of Walter O'Shea's pawn shop, I literally had to cross here, and then cross again. So I have to do this whole zigzag around 2nd and Washington to get over to the spot, which, like over here, it's just another parking lot now. But again, this used to be just lined with various buildings that supported various businesses. But again, a lot of pawn shops. And seeing how coming off the Morrison Bridge, the road kind of angles to become Washington Street. Washington Street probably went a little bit more kind of this way. So O'Shea's place probably wouldn't have been like right here, just off the street. It probably would have been more kind of where like the first two lanes of the road are on the ramp. That's probably more likely where the actual shop was located, because Washington Street probably went just straight through as opposed to turning up to the bridge like it is today. But anyway, it was known that O'Shea himself was, he reportedly was keeping some $8,000 in his safe at his workplace. That was at least how that information got out. Who knows? He told somebody, somebody overheard him, that somebody he told went and told somebody else, and that person did something, or this other people overheard that. I really don't know. But again, we're approximately, you know, this vicinity, anywhere from like right here to up onto the off-ramp here, because it was reportedly right between 1st and 2nd Street, and I'm almost directly between the two. So we are standing probably about where the back end of his pawn shop would have been, if not directly behind it, which actually benefits us in terms of this story. So again, Walter O'Shea reportedly was keeping some $8,000 at his place of business right here, which I did the math, and that would equate to over $200,000 today. So pushing almost $250,000 in money of 1878's day. So if someone could get in there and get their hands on that money, that would be a big score for any, you know, pickpocket, robber, thief of any sort in this area at that time. But apparently that information was either erroneous or who knows, because come the start of the workday on August 20th, 1878, Walter O'Shea comes to work, and these two other guys show up. A guy named Archie Brown and James Johnson. Two criminals. You know, criminals always loved to work in pairs. I know that's still kind of prominent today, but it was even more so prominent back then. So we got Archie Brown and James Johnson, and they show up at O'Shea's place, and it's obvious why they're there. They ain't there to buy stuff. Now, of course, O'Shea doesn't know them from a hole in the wall, so he doesn't know. They could just be customers to him. But you and I know differently. And these guys were not showing up to pawn anything. They weren't showing up to buy stuff. They were showing up to get their hands on that cash. Not the best spot to be in case the big quake decides to hit. But again, I'm kind of probably in generally the area that would be the back side of where Walter O'Shea's place was located. And so, early in the day, O'Shea's probably just opened his establishment. Archie Brown and James Johnson walk in, and they're perusing around, you know, like customers do. And behind them enters Charles Schwartz, who's only a 16-year-old teenager, and as he enters, Brown and Johnson turn to him and tell him, probably quietly so O'Shea can't tell, they tell him to close and lock the door. Well, this gets the attention of a couple guys that just happen to be sitting right across the street from the store. And of course, you know, it's work hours, O'Shea's place should be open, and they see this young kid close the door and lock it. These two men were Ed Miller and Lee Backenstoss. I'm not sure. His name looks kind of Greek, potentially. There was a very large Greek population in Portland back in the day. And they were sitting across the street, and they saw Brown and Johnson go in, but they were particularly intrigued by the fact that Schwartz came in shortly after them, closed and locked the door. He doesn't run Walter O'Shea's place. Why is he locking the door? And fortunately, it's 1878, and this lady's just stopping. I wonder if she's like suspicious about my doings. And I should probably, yeah, get out of here. Mind your own business. I don't know. God damn. So, I'll probably make myself look a little less conspicuous and kind of stand out. I'm starting to strain my back a little bit too, but so these two individuals, Miller and Backenstoss, I'm just going to go with Backenstoss, they go and they get an officer. Unfortunately, back in the day, I've addressed this in other videos, you know, because of the time that it was, you couldn't, you know, pull out your cell phone and call the police. So there was a lot more officers just kind of walking the streets. So they were able to track down an officer pretty quick. They found a constable by the name of Sprague and a fireman by the name of W.W. Sweeney. Told them about what they'd seen over here where O'Shea's place was. These two guys walking in, and then this kid walking in behind him and locking the door. So these three suspicious individuals that are now inside O'Shea's place, they don't know that authorities have already been reported of their suspicious doings. So Sprague and Sweeney are starting to make their way over here. And meanwhile, inside, Archie Brown and James Johnson, Schwartz is there, but more seemingly as an observer. They are haggling with O'Shea over a couple of blankets. You know, again, acting like customers. And after they presumably reach an agreement on a price, O'Shea walks over to his safe and bends down, and, you know, he's crouched down to the ground. And as he's crouched down like this, Archie Brown pulls an iron pipe of some kind and brings it down on him several times, just beats his head in with it, you know, knocks him out. O'Shea actually survived the attack, but he's down, and these three guys proceed to ransack the place, take whatever they can. But unfortunately, one of the things they discovered is that of that $8,000 that O'Shea was reportedly keeping at his place, he'd removed most of that money from the safe, and there wasn't really a whole lot left in there. So that was the big score they were hoping for, and it just didn't happen. So they, you know, grabbed whatever they could, you know, whatever they could carry out of the place, and they started to make their move to leave. The guys go for the front door, and who do they see out front but Constable Sprague and Sweeney there with them. So immediately they got to reconfigure their plans, so they backtrack back this way from the street. They break out a window, and they broke out a window that allowed them access to a building next door, and then proceeded to break out and go out behind the building, so out this way. And, you know, I believe Sweeney was the one that went in, pursued them, and when he saw them bailing out behind the buildings that would have been lining the street right here, they were out behind him now and running. Sweeney signaled to Sprague that they were bailing out the back way. So all three criminals are running this way. Or actually running this way. I'm sorry. I personally can't run that direction because they fled to First Avenue, which again is now where the Max line is. That's the direction they fled in, and that is the direction that Constable Sprague pursued them. So they were cutting right towards First Avenue here. Sprague ran to where Washington and First would be, right over here, and turned and started chasing them this way up First. And they didn't get very far, because when they came to Alder Street, which is this crossing street right here, it's one block down from Washington right here, this is where the criminals turned and started going west. So when they got to First and Alder over there, they turned and started going this direction and running up Alder in a westerly direction, and Sprague is chasing right behind them. And one of the problems is, you know, the main culprit, you know, they're all involved in robbery, but Archie Brown's the guy that actually assaulted Walter O'Shea. And he's also carrying so much loot that he can barely keep a running pace ahead of Sprague, who's barreling down on him. And reportedly, as things go, they make it through the intersection of 2nd and Alder. And presumably right after they cross, so right in this general area across the street, is where Archie Brown makes a decision that would ultimately lead to a horrid tragedy. So right around this area, kind of right after the three culprits in, you know, broad daylight running down the street with their loot, right after they cross this intersection and are still heading westbound, Archie Brown decides he's had enough. He knows he can't just keep outrunning the officers with all this loot, and he doesn't want to lose the loot. I even think he handed some off to the others. And he decides right about here that he's had enough and he's going to stop, and he's going to take a stand against Officer Sprague, who's coming running up behind him. So he stops, pulls a gun, and turns towards Sprague and opens fire. Takes one shot. As he's doing this, Sprague, who again is a few steps behind him running towards him, just by chance, as the shot was fired, I don't even know if he had actually even seen the gun get pulled yet, Constable Sprague crouched to the ground to pick up a rock to throw at Archie Brown, and in doing so, the shot whizzed over his head. Saved his life, because it probably would have hit him, right in this area. The problem was, all this commotion was attracting attention. And there was a store that was along Alder, right behind here, this general area. And one of the stores had a proprietor who had a son, a teenage son. I believe he was only 15 years old, a kid named Louis Joseph. I don't know. It could be one or the other. And being, an intrigued young kid, he saw the commotion, and he ran out onto the sidewalk to see what was happening. And that stray bullet that Archie Brown fired, that whizzed over Constable Sprague's head, hit Joseph dead on, killed him instantly. And so with that event happening, suddenly a lot more attention was focused on the boy that had just been shot, dead straight on in the chest. Fell down on the sidewalk in this vicinity. And in that chaos, Brown, James Johnson and Charles Schwartz were already getting a little ahead of him. He'd given them some leeway to get ahead. And then Brown was able to turn and escape, and they actually stole, I think, a horse and carriage like one block over on Morrison, and just took off in a western direction. And when they got far enough kind of toward the fringe of town, they abandoned the horses there and split and went their separate ways. And all three essentially ended up on the lam for a little while after what went down in this area.